are listening to the most comprehensive paranormal archive on the internet.
Welcome to Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight I'm sharing experiences, true paranormal stories from the web. As always, you can find all episodes of the show along with links to social media, ways to listen, and ways to support the show at the website that is salsidoparanormal.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.com. And support is never expected but always appreciated, as there are expenses in making these shows. And there are many ways to support the show. You can share your experiences either through my email, which is salsidoparanormal@gmail.com, or through the form on the website, and either have me read them on the show or have you join me on the show to talk about them. You can also sign up for the Patreon feed and get all the extra content there for as little as $1 a month. You can also, I forgot to say, share the show with others and rate and review it on your favorite podcast platforms. And you can also check out the merchandise store and find all kinds of shirts and other items there with designs made by friends of the show. And then, of course, there's always a link to make a one-time donation through PayPal. And please follow friends of the show. That would be Jen, the Arcane Observer, who has her own channel and is also the co-host of this show on Saturdays whenever she's able to join me. Also, Ricky of the Anything Is Possible podcast, who does a paranormal themed show on Sundays, which I co-host. And Michael Strange, host of Trouble Minds Radio, which I frequently co-host as well. And the Trouble Minds Radio Network, KUAP, digital broadcasting, where you can hear all kinds of amazing shows, as well as my own, online 24/7 for free. And I think that takes care of everything there. Thank you all for listening in. And let me get back to these true stories here. So this next one, let's see here. That's a longer one. Okay. This next one says, I was playing Manhunt in the woods on my reserve. And this is in Saskatchewan. I'm not sure how to say the other word there, name there. With my younger brother, older brother, cousins, and my girlfriend. We gave them time to hide while we stayed back. There's a huge forest behind our house, so it was the perfect place to play. I have to admit, it's pretty cool out there at night. You can see the stars so clearly. We played 2 rounds of Manhunt. I don't know how that goes, but apparently it's a game. The first time, we found them without much trouble. But the second time, something happened that I still can't explain. So when we were about to start the second round, my older brother and I were still a seeker, and in the distance, we heard my mom call in my cousin's girlfriend, and I lost my spot. My brother, and we thought that some of them would be still out there with us. We assumed that some of them, like the younger cousins of mine, went back inside, and some of them stayed out. At times when we were looking, we heard a slight, quiet shush, and it sounded like it was an indication that they were close. We heard it a couple of times, and we heard their voices, like they gave their spot away. But after following those sounds, we couldn't find them. So I ran back to the house and checked to see if all of them were in there. And they were. I heard the shush about 5 times, and it was leading me away from the house that night. I don't know what I encountered, I don't know if my cousins were playing with me, but we were pretty far away from the house. If they were, because they would be inside from the window screen doing those shushing noises. That's what I would think. So I don't know what I encountered that night. I didn't see anything. I just heard it. And my older brother heard it too, a couple of times. But I heard it most when I was alone, when we split up. And that's where that one ends. I wonder if someone or some others were playing along. Maybe some other being, some other consciousness, sort of for good or for ill, was playing along, and it's odd that seems like the sounds were leading this person away from the house. I don't know what the purpose of that would be. It's hard to, I mean, I hate to assume anything for sure, but it is fascinating. I'm glad that they went back to the house. So yeah, I'm not sure what that was, but it's a pretty, I mean, if you think of that sound, you know, you hear people say, like, I don't want to do it because I don't know how it'll come through on audio, but just that sound, you know, and I'm not sure what made it there in that case. Moving on to the next one here. This one says, back in 2020, two friends and I moved into a brand new apartment building. Sorry, no other tenants yet. Just empty floors and echoing hallways. One night we were talking in the lobby, when we heard a voice from the 7th floor. It called one of our names. The voice sounded exactly like one of us. We all froze, then slowly looked at each other. None of us had spoken. We took the elevator up to the 7th floor. Dark, empty, silent. No people, no furniture, nothing. Weeks later, we started hearing footsteps at night in the hallway. Sometimes the elevator would stop on our floor and open with nobody inside. But the worst moment happened last week. We heard that same voice again in the stairwell, calling our names. The problem is, that friend moved out 2 months ago. And that's where that one ends. I wonder, it always seems to happen with these kinds of places where they're mostly empty. It seems like there's always activity going on. Maybe not 24/7, but just, it always seems like at some point, whether it's an empty apartment building that hasn't been filled in yet, or a stadium, or a theater, you have one or two people in this whole massive space, and yet it seems like there's other people there that you just can't always see or hear. But things happen to indicate that there's someone else there with you. I wonder, again, does consciousness, ghost, spirit, souls, whatever, when they're still here for whatever reason, and if they're just moving around out of interest, out of what's going on in a place, if they're attached to the land or a place by good or bad memories, do they sort of gravitate towards these kinds of places that are mostly empty? Do they use them as sort of as homes or places to stay? But because there's not that many people there, but then sometimes either accidentally or intentionally, they're seen or heard by other people that are working in or living in this case, this new or just empty place. This topic or this situation, these circumstances with mostly empty places and paranormal or anomalous activity just seem to come up over and over again. And you even get that with nature. I mean, people being out there in nature, having experiences when they, as far as I can tell, there's no one else around them or a ways. So I don't know if it's an indoor thing or outdoor thing, or if it's just when there's not physical, living, breathing people, not a lot of them in one space, do other less physical entities occupy that space more because of that. It seems like if you look at all the experiences people have, the answer may be yes. Again, I don't know for sure, but just based on patterns and accounts of experiences, it seems like it could be the case. Moving on to the next one here. This one says, I was at one of my work locations today when I saw a girl walk out from behind a 5 to 6 foot diameter decorative column on my right and cross the walkway in front of me towards another building. She was then obscured by another column on my left as she passed behind it. She stood out to me because she was dressed much less professionally than what I usually see at that location, and lacked a visible ID badge, suggesting to me that she was a visitor. So I watched for her to step out from behind the second column so I could direct her to a security office if she looked confused about where to go. But instead of emerging from behind the second column, she emerged from behind the first column exactly the same as before. She continued on, passing behind the second column and reappearing normally on the other side, and continuing on into the building. Definitely a hard one to explain. That's where that one ends. That's fascinating. I really wonder about if they had thought to look at their clock at the time, what they would have seen, if their watch or whatever. Did time stutter along with the image of this person, sort of repeating their motion? And again, without physically being able to do that, did they see some kind of a forerunner, sort of you hear about these things happening here and there where people will hear or see, in a lot of cases it's people that they know, someone coming home or coming to a place, but then they'll go look and they won't be there. The people won't be there. But then sometime later, the people will get there, and all the same sounds will happen again. I don't know if that can be possible in with people that are strangers to the person having the experience. I guess I don't know why it can't happen. So I don't know if this is one of those situations, but just with strangers, or if it's something else. I'm not sure what to make of that. Of course, there's this idea of a simulation of some kind of reality having glitches, time being weird in certain ways in certain places. I don't know what to make of all that. But that is fascinating, especially in a situation like that where you have someone repeating their action or appearing to repeat their action. Now, I have heard of apparitions and even in some cases cryptids, Bigfoot or Sasquatch, going behind objects and then just vanishing. And then people even going behind the object that they saw, whatever they saw go behind, and it's not there anymore. I've heard of that. So at first when I was reading this, and before this person mentioned what happened, I was waiting for them to say something like, and she never appeared again. But that's not what happened. So that's a fascinating experience there, and I don't know how to write that off, which is usually the case with most of these. And there are some cases, some accounts of experiences I find where, when I find them online, where it seems like there might be a logical explanation for it. And a lot of times, if I look in the comments, there'll be people saying sort of this similar things in the comments. So it takes a bit of work to find all these and sift through all the stuff I don't actually end up sharing on the show. And there's just a note on that too. There are always posts that I find that I end up not using, not because they're necessarily bad posts or they're not always about negative things happening to people, but if they're too long, if they're really long, then I don't like to use them on the show because then I can't get through many posts in a show. And then there's always a possibility if it's way too long, I might not get through the whole single post in one show. So this is not all of everything that you can find online about people's experiences that I'm sharing here. This is just what sort of works for this show, for this kind of format, and for the purpose of this show, which is to show that not everything is negative when it comes to the paranormal or unexplained. So, a couple of things that I guess I've been thinking about lately, and things that I've known because I do the show, but I may not have said before on the show about how I find and decide on what to share on these shows. So let's get through at least two more here. This one says, this happened around summer of last year. My friend and I were just sitting outside, talking to each other, and we checked to see what time it was. It was around 9:15, maybe 9:30 p.m. We were thinking, oh, it's not as late as we thought it was. So we stayed and talked some more. I promise, swear on everything, that we were only talking for another 15 to 20 minutes. When we checked to see what time it was 11:30 p.m. We both looked at each other like, what the heck? We checked the date just to make sure there was no time change, and it wasn't the month for us to have a time change. Now, I've only had this happen one other time, but the other person I was with hadn't noticed. The feeling I got, it just felt so ominous. Almost like we weren't supposed to notice it or something. So we started laughing because we just couldn't believe that we were talking for 2 hours because there was just no way. Then I kept hearing stuff rustling in the bushes near my room, which we both wrote off as the raccoons that lived back there. But he also said that he was feeling scared. We just sat there in silence for a few minutes before trying to talk about it again. But once we mentioned how weird it was that the time jumped like that, we just got this creepy, eerie feeling, like we weren't supposed to be outside anymore. So we agreed to just try and go to bed. We only talked about it once since, but it's never happened again since then. Time jumped that night without a time change supposed to be occurring, and I still have no explanation for it. And that one is done. That's where that one ends. That one is fascinating. I wonder, it's weird that there was that rustling right after they realized that the time had jumped, apparently, as far as I could tell. I'm just wondering here, with that ominous feeling, I don't know, it's a really odd one. My brain sort of, I guess, has like someone who's into stories and all that wants to connect the rustling in the bushes to that experience, even though I can't logically do that automatically. But and I know people can lose track of time when they're talking. However, usually I feel like there wouldn't be an ominous feeling attached to that kind of experience. At least not strong enough where they decide to go inside and just go to bed. I don't know. This is one of those cases where everything I could see, people just writing it off as mistakes, basically mistaken perception of time and of just the world around them, all that kind of stuff. But the one thing to keep in mind with all this is paranormal, unexplained, supernatural, anomalous experiences. They're not always, I think probably in most cases, most of the time, they're not like what people see in the movies or on TV. A lot of times it's more subtle than that. And in some cases, it's like this one right here. Overall, it's some might say it's very subtle. Even then, there are cases where it's even possibly more subtle than that. In other words, it's just a shadow that is seen for a quick second or two. It's just even in some cases, it's just a feeling that someone gets in a certain situation or when they pass a certain place or whatever. So, but that's how some of this works. It's not, like I said, it's not always dramatic and in our face and obvious that it's something anomalous. So let's see here. Let's get to at least one more here. Excuse me. This one says, I've had several glitches over the years, and this is, of course, glitches in the Matrix or reality or however you want to call that. But a couple stand out. This is one of the most dramatic, not least because my partner was still alive and backed me up. I was upstairs reading when I heard a bump just outside the door. I went out to see what was going on, and I immediately stepped on what turned out to be a picture hook. So it was obviously what had happened. Excuse me, something had fallen off the wall. Here was the hook. There was the hole where it had been. There was the gap where there should have been a wooden plaque. It was a crudely carved woman's face. Nothing strange so far. Only I couldn't find the plaque. Maybe it had fallen down a couple of steps onto the landing. But no, not there. My partner was out. When he got back, I dragged him up the stairs, pointed to the gap, and asked if he could remember what used to be there. Yes, he said, that ugly wooden plaque. And that was that. The plaque fell. Bump. The hook left behind. Plaque gone. Nothing I could do. It annoyed me. I liked that plaque. It was ugly, but it had a certain charm. Months passed. Maybe years. I wasn't keeping track. Then one day I was downstairs in the living room, looking through a box that had sat there neglected since we moved in, several years ago. Literally hadn't been touched since. I was bored and wanted to know what was in it. You're ahead of me, I know. Right at the bottom, under things I hadn't seen for years, was the plaque. I mean, how? I don't blame you if you don't believe it. I don't believe it myself. It hurts my brain, thinking about it. And that's where that one ends. And that is where the show ends. And I will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal. Take care.